So when it comes to nerdy shit, I'm like the biggest nerd that you're ever gonna meet. And it's not just Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. Anything that's like nerdy that, you know, a nerd typically likes, I'm probably gonna like it. So obviously then that means that I'm a huge fan of Star Trek. Data from The Next Generation is literally like the greatest character on anything ever. Data is the greatest character of all time, and I'm going to say that on anything, just across the board, because he's just so adorable. If you watch Star Trek The Next Generation and you don't love Data, then something is wrong with you. He's so innocent and he just wants to be human and he's so sweet, and you know, he could like rip your head off and like crush your skull into bits, but he doesn't because he's just so nice, and you know, he's better than everyone on the ship, by the way. He should be the captain. You know, he's smarter than everyone, he's stronger than everyone, he's just better than everyone, and then he gets treated like shit just because he's an android, just because he's not technically human. So in the Star Trek television show Deep Space Nine, they're in a space station that's hovering over this planet called Bajor. And the people of Bajor were previously subjugated by this race of aliens called Cardassians. And so the Bajor developed this religion circulating around these aliens that lived inside of a wormhole called the Prophets. Except they weren't really gods, they were aliens, and you know, it was like their religion that they built around the aliens. So in this episode, there's an issue on the space station. One of the religious leaders from the planet comes up to the space station, and she goes to the school, and she sees that the teacher is teaching the kids about the aliens in the wormhole and completely ignoring the mythology surrounding like the prophets and all that jazz. And so basically throughout the course of the episode, it escalates slowly from like a simple, you know, separation of, you know, religion and, you know, what's taught in schools to all out like terrorist attacks, and then she's mobilizing the people, and it's like really fucking crazy. And you know, it got me thinking that that's how it always starts. This character, the religious leader in Star Trek IX, whose name is Vedic Wynn, is essentially the High Sparrow from Game of Thrones. Religious charlatans that use religion for power, because you know, that's what he's doing. Sure, maybe on some level he buys into the faith of the Seven, but it's always about power. The only difference between this High Sparrow and the last High Sparrow is that the last High Sparrow was willing to be bought and be subservient to the king. But this High Sparrow says, fuck the king, I'm gonna be the fucking king. I want all the power. And of course, there's still gonna be just as much fucking corruption within these religious groups as always. Nothing's really gonna change, except now the church has more power than ever. And you know, that's historical, that happens throughout all of history, and you can find stuff like that in all types of, you know, fantasy and sci-fi novels, you know, like the religious stuff that always happens, especially in sci-fi. That's recurring over and over and over again. And you know, George R. Martin has written a bunch of sci-fi, obviously, so you know, it kind of carried over into Game of Thrones, and then also Game of Thrones is based off of, you know, like the medieval society. You know, that was a big part of, you know, real medieval society was like a religious oppression and stuff, and it was just crazy. You know, I'm not religious, you know, it's whatever. You know, you can believe whatever, you know, it's fine. No one cares, you know, it's fine. People can just believe whatever, who cares? You can put the Star Trek universe next to the Game of Thrones universe and just see the differences. You know, in the Star Trek world, they've reached a level of thinking, the human race has reached a level of thinking, you know, that's above what we have. Now, when you look at Game of Thrones, and you know, they still have this like archaic feudal system, and it's like all this honor and like noble nonsense. In Star Trek, it's a perfect, you know, socialist society where people are perfectly free to just, you know, go about their own goals and to pursue whatever they want. And then in Game of Thrones, it's much more survival of the fittest. I fucking hate the fucking, I don't know what she is, Silent Sister, but she can't be a Silent Sister because she's all like shame, whatever, the fucking shame bitch. I hope Cersei rips that fucking bitch's throat out. I hate that woman because she's just so evil. You're just so evil. You're torturing this woman like you're just fucking perfect. They're always fucking hypocrites. You know, you want to fucking bully other people into believing what you want to believe, and you know, and then you turn around and you're fucking way worse than the person that you were bullying. You know, and it's freaking ridiculous. Normal people, religious or not, don't tend to care that much about what other people do with their lives. It's like the tiny percent of, you know, fanatics that are like super vocal, that just want to like dictate what everybody else does. that ruin it for, the vast majority of people. And the same thing is true in the Game of Thrones universe. The vast majority of people in the Game of Thrones world are okay with, the sex and all that stuff. But then you get someone like the High Sparrow to mobilize a few fucking crazy people, and, they fucking bring down an empire, like you said. And, a huge part of A Song of Ice and Fire in Game of Thrones is the religious fanatics, like Melisandre, who convinces a man to burn his own daughter alive. He burned his own daughter because his belief in this red god was so fucking strong. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy that back in the day, people were so fucking mad at me for even suggesting that Stannis actually believed in the red god. I remember saying, I think he actually believes in the red god, and people in the comments were like, fuck you. There's no reason to think that he really believes. He's just using Melisandre for her power. He doesn't really believe in the red god. Ooh. And he burns his fucking daughter. And by the way, I have the season 5 Blu-rays, and George R.R. Martin definitely says that 100% he always intended for Stannis Baratheon to burn his daughter. So no, it was his wife's idea. It was him making the decision. That's the point. It was Stannis that chose to burn his daughter. And that was the fall of Stannis. Like I said before. You didn't want to believe me, fucking assholes. You didn't want to believe me, but, it turned out to be true. So, what? So, who's winning now? Who's winning now? Me, not you. So you failed. That's 1 for me, 0 for you. One thing that Game of Thrones has done for me that I'm really happy is that it's made fantasy cool again. And that's another thing that I really wish we could do with Star Trek. I mean, because Star Trek, I don't really know if it's ever been cool because, it is before my time. It's something that I picked up, later on in life. But, with the newer Star Trek movies in particular, they're like, they're just action movies in outer space. They're not real Star Trek. Because, they would never deal with an issue like I was just discussing with the religious thing in one of those J.J. Abrams movies. Those movies are all like explosions and fistfights, and it's just, it's not really Star Trek. It's like if they made a Game of Thrones series, but, they had just one main character that just, survived and was badass all the time, and they just called it The Song of Ice and Fire, and it was like a spin-off. It wouldn't be really Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire because, you changed the central idea. You can't do that. You can't do that. The point is, religious fanatics fuck up shit for everyone. In that episode of Star Trek, it was like, the teacher was perfectly reasonable. She had every right to stand by her convictions. She's like, I'm going to teach these kids about science and history and the truth. And then this fucking bitch is coming up in here like, no, you got to teach them my religion because, why? Why? There's literally no evidence to suggest that these entities inside of this wormhole are gods. They're not gods. They're aliens. Alright? That's just what they are. It's like climate change deniers, but that's a whole nother thing. That's enough. So this has been my nerd ramble. Thank you guys for making it through that if you did. Peace out, dudes. Make sure you like this video and subscribe.